What is up, everyone? It is JD Temple here from the Light of the Darkness. Um, just getting ready for tonight's midnight ritual with Lucifer, and some crazy things are popping off in the world right now. And I just wanted to give you all this emergency update. I wanted to listen to it, and you can listen to it while I listen to it with me if you want to, but you don't have to, whatever you want to do. I hope you do some cool magic tonight. I hope you spend some time with your family tonight. I'm alone tonight, and that's okay. I haven't been feeling great, that's for sure. I thought I actually had fucking COVID, but I took a test and I don't have that, so that's good. But just been sorry about that. My stream got interrupted there for a minute. I had some technical difficulties. What's up, EA? What's up, dude? What's up, Jeremiah? Happy New Year, y'all, man. And I hope y'all had a great Christmas. I hope you've had like a great holiday season. I hope like that everything is going well for you and that life is giving you what you want. Um, that's all we can ask for. So we're gonna get this thing going. What's up, Chameleon? Hey, everybody. I'll say what's up to everybody here for a minute. And like, thanks for coming to spend some time with me and check this out, man. The world's going crazy, and y'all know it. I mean, these things must occur for us to shift into this fifth dimensional consciousness, and it is happening. And there are going to be those of us that will shift with it. We just gotta, like I've been saying before, not live in fear, but but be prepared. Like, live in a state of preparedness, but don't live in fear. Like, get yourself ready for whatever may come, but don't be afraid. Like, do not be afraid. Don't buy into it. And that's not what this is about, y'all. This is not what this is about. This is just about you knowing what the fuck is going on, to at least me giving you this information to the best of my ability. This type of thing in conjunction with the channeling work that I do with the psychic, you know, visions that I receive and that I get, that I've been getting forever. This is just kind of part of that. So we'll get into it. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you more here in a minute. We're gonna get into it. And Happy New Year's, and I love you all, and thanks for being here. You fucking rock. You fucking rock like a motherfucker. All right, guys, get ready for some hard truths if you haven't heard what's going on yet. It just gets more interesting every day, crazier every day, doesn't it? So grab a drink, grab some popcorn. This is about 27 minutes long, and then I'll talk to you guys here again at the end. And by the way, I love you.
All right, Happy New Year and all the other obligatory platitudes I'm supposed to say. Now that the small talk's out of the way, let's get down to business. I have some insider information. The Civil Reserve Air Fleet has been activated. I repeat, the Civil Reserve Air Fleet in the United States has been activated. I'm going to talk exactly about what that means in just a moment's time. Basically, when you have a logistical emergency of an international scope and scale, this is when you activate that. And we're going to talk about what exactly it means and the other details that they provided me about the situation. We also have to talk, of course, about the war in Yemen that has finally become formalized and codified in the mainstream media. We also have to talk, of course, about how this is going to affect the broader war, because we're about to kick a hornet's nest. It's about to go parabolic. The price of oil is likely going to skyrocket. Maersk has suspended operations in the Red Sea once again. The Iranian Navy is mobilizing, and shit is just hitting the fan all around. We're expecting a joint statement from the U.S. and its naval coalition in the Red Sea any moment now to decide exactly how they are going to respond. It appears as though they are preparing a military strike against the Houthis, and when they do that, the shit is going to hit the fan. The shit has already hit the fan in light of what's happened in the last 24 hours with 3 gunboats and 10 Houthi deaths. The Houthis have already declared war. No matter what posture we take from this point forward, We have China's Xi on the eve of New Year's saying that reunification with Taiwan is inevitable. This, of course, on the eve of the elections in Taiwan. January is going to be an incredibly interesting month where a lot of our fate is going to be determined. According to Russian media, they are putting the blame on the Belgorod terrorist attacks on Vladimir Zelensky, claiming that these were authorized by his main intelligence head, Budanov, and that would put the blame square on the Ukrainians for that attack. And this is why New Year's has been canceled in Russia. There's a very large police presence in every major city across North America as they are expecting, if not terrorist attacks, just a lot of protest activity, people advocating for humanitarian reasons for the
Yes,
Gaza
this is
crises.
Canadian
Okay,
Prepper,
now, with respect
exactly.
to the Civil
He's
Air
fucking
Fleet
awesome.
situation, basically what the Civil Reserve Air Fleet is it's when selected aircraft from U.S. airlines are contractually committed to the military and indisposed to the military for brief periods of time when they have there's an emergency, and this is to augment Department of Defense airlift requirements in emergencies when the need for airlift exceeds the capability of military aircraft. Okay, so the commander, U.S. Transportation Command, with the approval of the Secretary of Defense, so you know this is top down, right, is the activation authority of all three stages of the Civil Reserve Air Fleet during a crisis. And effectively, what we're seeing right now is that they're mobilizing either to get military equipment somewhere or perhaps even aid, but I highly doubt the aid thing. I think it's more to do with military equipment. Now, which theater of war are they preparing for? Is this just a restock of the Gerald R. Ford, which is now making its way back to Norfolk? It's possible. A lot of people are concerned that, well, the Gerald R. Ford is retreating, that this means Biden is retreating. I mean, they got pretty much half the Navy there already anyways. The Gerald R. Ford's deployment, as far as I know, was extended 2 months beyond when it was supposed to go back. So they're just bringing it back now, likely because they've already fortified it with enough coalitional warships in the region. Is it pertaining to that? Is it because the war with Hezbollah is about to start? Is it due with the war with Yemen that is about to formally start? Recall, we were talking about this for months before most people even knew about the Bab el-Mandeb Strait or the Red Sea. I've been talking about this, and it's not easy to predict these things, guys. So here's what's going to happen from this point forward. Actually, just to give you a little bit of context, if you're not familiar what's happened in the last 24 hours, basically, the Houthis tried to attack a ship or board a ship. I'm not sure exactly what they're up to. Anyways, these ships, these three gunboats, were taken out by U.S. helicopters. Okay, so this is a massive escalation because this is the first time that the Houthis have come under attack by the Americans. There was that other time when I think there were airstrikes within Yemen, but they were unconfirmed, and I don't think that CENTCOM actually took responsibility for that, but I could be mistaken. But this is clear-cut, explicit one-on-one engagement between the U.S. military and the Houthis, resulting in 10 deaths. So they've basically all but declared full all-out war. I mean, they've already effectively declared war. And as I've said on many occasions on this channel, you seldom ever hear any group declare war on each other anymore. You use more euphemistic political speak. So Maersk, the world's largest shipping company, has once again suspended their activities. Remember, they were being escorted by the U.S. Navy. So even though the U.S. Navy came to their rescue, the risk is just too high. So they're going to suspend it for 48 hours once again, which tells you that the Americans are likely planning something within this next 48 hours. But I can't see the situation calming down after that. I can only see it getting massively worse. A senior Houthi official has already left for emergency talks in Tehran. What the result of that is going to be, is it going to be the coordination of activities? Apparently, the Iranian Navy is becoming more mobilized in the Red Sea region. They're sending another ship to join their flotilla of ships there. As well, as I recently reported, there are 33,000 strong fishing vessel militias that get commandeered in times of full-blown war mobilization within Iran that they have at their disposal as well. And this is going to be, I think, one of the first wars in the Middle East where you're going to be seeing the deployment of more drones, naval drones, and things of that nature that we never had before. Okay, so it's going to make the asymmetrical military landscape a lot more complicated. So what we're hearing now, before I talk about my predictions for how this is going to play out, we're going to see a joint statement by the U.S. and UK, as well as other coalitional forces, expected any moment now. In fact, it could already have been released during the time of uploading and making this video. Final preparations for a large-scale military operation against the Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. Now, this is beyond a terrorist group, I would say. This is a very sizable military. It's a very well-regimented military, but there's also a very large guerrilla-style asymmetrical component to it, which makes it it's like the Taliban, but with ICBMs, okay? And a more advanced technology that, of course, they're getting from the Iranians. The operation will likely include hundreds of missiles and airstrikes in western Yemen and the Red Sea. Now, as soon as they do this, actually, let me just finish this and then I'll give you my prognostications. The UK is preparing military options to stop the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. Possible joint, as I already said, airstrikes. RAF Typhoon jets and HMS Diamonds may also be involved. This could just be a ultimatum, a final warning to the Houthis. But now that the Americans have killed 10 Houthis, I mean, it's on. The honey badgers are going to go buck wild. They just do not care. The goal is going to be to degrade their anti-ship capabilities, which this, of course, poses a lot of challenges because a lot of their capabilities are located underground, just like Hezbollah and Hamas. This subterranean combat, man, almost makes wars completely unwinnable this day and age. The priority targets are going to be coastal radar sites, weapon storage facilities, as well as missile and drone launch sites. Now, as soon as they go after the Houthis in this manner, I do believe that in spite of the fact that they've tried to create some calm with the Saudis, I think that the Saudi Arabian oil fields are under risk. The critical infrastructure there is at risk. And the U.S. military bases throughout the Middle East that the Houthis have threatened to attack are also at risk. And as soon as you attack those military bases, the U.S. military is going to respond and intensify their counterattacks on the other militia groups within the region. That's going to activate all the other militia groups from Iraq to Syria. Then, of course, you still have the situation developing on the Lebanese border in which you have 250,000 Israelis who've already evacuated the north. So this is a hornet's nest that's about to get kicked, okay? And this is going to kick off 2024 with a bang. I mean, if the markets just remain the same after that, you know it's all a farce. Because there is no way in hell you can disrupt this shipping bottleneck corridor as well as potentially imperil the world's oil supply without the markets reacting. And the rational thing would be for the price of oil to skyrocket and for the markets to effectively tank, because this is going to put a big drag on the supply chain. I mean, I'm not a macroeconomist, so maybe there is some unintended effect that might lead to, prices going up or something. But, and of course, shipping prices are going to go up. So I guess if you're a shipping company, your stock value might increase marginally. But I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out in the markets, but I cannot see a situation, a rational situation, in which we see a war and the markets just remain stable. Unless the Fed, that's when they reverse gear in order to, address the emergency crisis. And maybe that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a COVID-like return to quantitative easing because there's a massive crisis. And that, of course, this could actually pump up the dollar a little bit because of the global uncertainty. But we'll see. If that global uncertainty that typically happens and the flocking to the global reserve currency that typically is accompanying a global crisis, if that's not there anymore, that's when you know that the dollar is effectively dead and we're on the way down. All right. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think this we've been talking about this for months, and I think everything that we're saying is going to play out. Eventually, Iran will be drawn into the conflict. In the thick of this conflagration, we're going to see attempted airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, but the Iranians are dug in so deep. Yeah, I mean, the Subterranean thing, like they've flaunted their underground networks of nuclear-proof bases before, attacking the Iranians with anything short of a nuclear weapon is just pointless. Okay, even with the best bunker busters, you're not going to get to these centrifuges, and who knows what sort of hidden ones. And then once you do that, you've just created a situation where they are going to take their nuclear program underground. Okay, so the situation has a high probability of blowing wildly out of proportion here in the next 24 hours, I would say. North Korea is drawing up plans for a nuclear strike. Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, ordered his military leaders to prepare plans for a nuclear attack on South Korea. It doesn't get more explicit than that. Now, obviously, this is just bluster. This is rhetoric. This is what we would expect from Kim Jong-un. But I've never seen it so explicit, and that paired with their actual capability. In the past, we didn't know if they had ICBM capability. We didn't know if they had the proper reconnaissance capability. We didn't know if they had, nuclear capability.
Yeah, thanks for being here,
Now we
everyone. I
have
love you guys
a
so
situation
much.
where they have
Thank
all of
you
those
so
three things, and they're
much. Love
openly
you.
making these threats. And what people need to ask themselves is, why is Kim Jong-un suddenly triggered in this way? When everybody is focused on the Middle East and Russia, why is Kim Jong-un acting up in the way that he is right now? We have to be doing something to poke that bear. We got to give the North Koreans a name. I got the honey badgers for the Houthis. We got the bears for the Russians. We got the American eagles. We need something for the North Koreans. We got the dragon. What is it going to be for the North Koreans? I don't know. But either way, these guys are not really to be messed with. They got nuclear weapons, 60 of them by some accounts. And the South Koreans, of course, are getting quite concerned. But we have to ask ourselves why. Because we're not hearing, of course, we know that the U.S. and the South Koreans are doing nuclear exercises, but we're not hearing about that on the mainstream media, which is concerning to me. Why are we not? We're just hearing about, Kim Jong-un is triggered. Well, why is he triggered? Why are we provoking them in this way at this point in time? Has this type of pressure ever worked? Basically, the North Koreans have effectively said, we will do a first nuclear strike. That's in their nuclear doctrine. They've said that they will never give up nuclear weapons ever again. And now that you have this alliance of nations that are all equally under sanctions, that collectively have everything they need to sustain life. You're talking about China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. They have all the raw materials. They have all the brain power they need to basically have access to anything they want. So our sanctions don't mean anything anymore. There was a time when, sanctioning North Korea, that, when we weren't at odds with the Russians, that was actually impactful. But it's not impactful anymore. So they're going to also be developing their nuclear arsenal. They're going to be launching 3 satellites, okay? And he's basically accusing the United States of driving the region towards the brink of nuclear war, and that tensions have reached an all-time high. We got the remilitarization of the demilitarized zone, and I really don't know what the motivation here is, the thing. I mean, unless North Korea really is more of a Chinese bulwark than we understand, and if it is the place where the Americans are going to engage the Chinese in addition to Taiwan, like it's going to be a proxy, because look, a war between China and the United States, if what we know about the war between Hamas and Israel is any indication, then we know that the Chinese have whole underground cities. I mean, thousands of miles of underground cities, okay? Thousands of miles of impenetrable fortresses. The Russians as well. And I guarantee you we probably got something like that here in North America as well. However, I would say that it's probably not as extensive because we just don't have the workforce and the manpower that they do. But either way, a war between nations, it would just be nuclear. And as the guy we reviewed on here, Joel Skousen, said, you're not going to engage in a nuclear war unless you have a sizable military occupying force that can go in there afterwards. Because what's going to happen is you're going to nuke your adversary, and then they're going to rebuild, and then their primary prerogative is going to be to nuke you once again. So unless you have the occupying forces sent in there thereafter, you're not going to do the nuke thing. So he thinks that the Russians are waiting for the Chinese because they have the manpower and the mobilization. Here in the West, I mean, I was talking to a guy who's in the Canadian military last night. These people are completely oblivious to the capabilities of the Chinese and the Russians, and there's just a certain ignorance and arrogance about their capabilities, and there's this I don't know what it is. I guess we people here just really don't understand how industrially inept we are in fighting a war against these. We just assume that we have better technology. Well, have you taken a look at a Canadian fighter jet lately and compared it to a J-20 fighter jet of the Chinese? And they'll say, well, yeah, but they just copied that. Well, the Chinese, I mean, why wouldn't you copy it? Why wouldn't you copy a piece of technology? Why would you reinvent the wheel? But they've already exceeded us beyond that. So you copy up to the point where it's state of the art, and then you excel beyond that. And I can tell you right now that the Chinese education system, their social media, is tailored towards innovation and creation. And we are getting left in the dust. So until we get our head out of our asses and we start mobilizing and we change our culture values of what we value in terms of education, I mean, we're going to get left in the dust. All right, and we're still relying on 40-year-old Minuteman missiles to protect us when the Russians and the Chinese are vaulting ahead with all of these advanced new forms of strategic technologies that are going to completely level us. And it's very concerning, and that's why I'm a prepper, because we're using old technology. The Navy, it's old tech. And we're now entering the era of robotics, autonomous vehicles, this very high-tech, sophisticated asymmetrical warfare, which is making a lot of these more, what would it be, like fourth gen, third, fourth gen warfare tools like tanks, just obsolete. So anyways, in terms of what's going on in Russia,
you are a turkey.
Essentially the Russians have blamed Zelensky for this, and I think Zelensky came out and tacitly accepted responsibility for the airstrikes on Belgorod, or whatever they were. And according to Russian media now, they're saying that the directorate of the Ministry of Defense, Budanov, the guy everybody thought was dead a while back, or probably was injured in an attack, but not completely taken out of commission. Well, they're saying that he was the one who authorized the missile
thanks,
strike on
Kathy.
Belgorod,
Happy
and of
New
course,
Year's. I really appreciate that.
From Zelensky. So now the Russians are saying that Zelensky, who of course takes his orders, at least in theory, from NATO command, even though we'll never admit that, but of course we would cut him off if he was doing anything that was outside of what we approved, is taking orders from, is basically the one who was responsible for these attacks. So this has caused all activities in Moscow to be suspended. Some people on the Ukrainian side are saying, no, this was a false flag committed by the Russians. I don't know what it is, but we know that's an escalation. The Russians are claiming they've taken down some HIMARS. The Ukrainians they've taken down some Kinzhals, and that war is heating up primarily because winter has come so late there. This northern hemisphere warming phenomena, it is not limited to us over here. I have a acquaintance in Ukraine who's been sending me videos of the spring, that there's no snow on the ground anywhere, effectively. It's just too warm. So the mud season has prevented a lot of even attacks on critical infrastructure up until this point in time would not have been well timed, considering it's not that cold out, okay? So I still don't understand exactly what the agenda is with Ukraine. I think that the Russians are playing the really, really long game. But I don't know, man. It's such a confusing state of affairs. But I do think in the next month, we're going to get a lot of answers in terms of whether or not the Middle East is going to flare up. I think there's a 99.9% chance that the war with Yemen is coming, and then that is going to spread to Iran. I think that Xi Jinping's comments today that Taiwan reunification is inevitable are a harbinger for what's to come. If the Taiwanese elect another pro-Western leader, then of course that is likely going to compel the Chinese to take action sooner Then later, this North Korean situation is going to flare up. The situation in Russia and Ukraine is going to continue to flare up. And now the Venezuelans are getting ready to go to war with the British Navy and the American Navy there. So everything on every front is just not looking good. And you know what concerns me most about 2024? Of course, there's the prospect of a civil war and civil unrest. Of course, tonight, I think they're concerned about protests, pro-Palestinian protests, and this is going to drive another divisive wedge between left and right. And
I've been telling
what
y'all
concerns
for
me is that we will see
at
a
least 6 or 8
massive
months to a
cyber
year,
attack,
the
internet
Civil War
blackout
is coming
scenario.
to the
And
United
it's not even the
States.
blackout
It's an
that concerns me
inevitability.
most anymore. It's not that the lights are going to go out indefinitely per se. I would almost say that an intermittent blackout of sorts, where you have periodic access to the internet, but you cannot confirm or deny the information that you're seeing with your own eyes. You cannot cross-reference. You cannot fact-check the information. We're entering an era right when we're at a point where the cyber attacks are going to be at a level of capability to bring down the entire internet or access to a large chunk of the internet for a wide swath of people. You are seeing the convergence
Cheers,
of
y'all. Love you.
AI-related tools, deepfake technology,
Thanks for
which
being
is
here,
going to
by the way.
present itself under these conditions, and so you're not going to be able to discern what's what. So just like the movie Leave the World Behind, which we talk about a lot on this channel, but we were talking about these cyber attack things long before that. But I think one of the critical things that brought to the forefront of the conversation was that you're going to have this confusion because you're not going to know whether the information you're receiving is verifiable or not, is real. And that could lead to all kinds of social unrest and chaos. And if there ever was a card to play before a impending financial collapse, it would be the cyber attack one. If you want...
That's a great question, Fun Boy, and we'll get into that. I actually live like all around military installations. I live like a mile from Fort Lee. When the time comes, when they come to each of our doors and they try to get you to come with them, tell you that where they're going to take you is a safe place, are you going to believe them? Like, that's going to be the moment of truth right there. When they come to round your asses up and take you to that quote unquote safe place, what you going to do then? You got to be ready for that moment, and you have to know and be online with all of your people that you're close to what the fuck you're going to do when that happens. Because the day will come when they will come house to house knocking on those doors. And then when that time comes, you're going to be very apt to go with them because you're probably not going to have any running water, you're probably not going to have power, and you're probably going to have limited food. This is not to scare you. This is just a reality more and more that we are potentially looking at. And that's not just here in the United States, that's everywhere. So that's the decision. That's the pivotal moment that everyone needs to have in mind is when that time comes, what are you going to do?
To cause a big reset in the economy, a great way to do it, which is not as obvious of a false flag, is a cyber attack, okay? And this is maybe how they get us on to the CBDCs, which are definitely coming down the pike. We're talking about mainstream media now saying that gold prices are about to go through the roof, and what they're really saying is that the US dollar is going to crash next year, because relative to the dollar it's measured in, of course gold is going to go up in price. So all I can say, my friends, is keep on prepping, because I think this is going to be the year. 2024 is going to be the year of the prepper. Coming off of 2020, 2021, and 2022, you would think to yourself, man, what could he possibly mean? I think that this is going to be the year. They're talking about new variants. We're entering uncharted territories for the climate stuff. It's 2 degrees here on December 31st today. I mean, there's no snow on the ground still. This is surreal. It is completely surreal. And as I've stated before, you're going to have the confluence of climate, conflict, contagion, cyber attack, and commerce, and whatever other C word you can imagine, all converging at once. And it's a polycrisis scenario, which is about to test the resilience of our systems that we rely on for the sustenance of life. So I would encourage you to take it upon yourself to get whatever you can right now. Convert those dollars into stuff. Okay, this is not financial advice. I guess it kind of is, but convert your. I think anything that you were to purchase right now that is not a television set, even a computer, because I even think I've noticed lately that hard drives and video cards, these things they're not getting any cheaper. And the whole Moore's Law thing has seemed to have ground to a halt recently. It's either they're becoming more expensive or they're becoming few and far between because people are using them for crypto. And some people will say crypto, but a lot of people who are well established, who are affluent, who are well networked, well connected, that I know are all preparing for things to hit the fan in 2024 in some way, shape, or form. Let's hope that it just works itself out and everybody backs down at the last minute. But if everybody acts like the honey badgers are acting right now in Yemen, then we're in for a wild, wild ride. And the more desperate people get, the higher the price of food goes, the less people have to lose, the more they're going to lose it. So stay tuned, my friends. We got a lot of incredible content coming your way. I mean, we're taking it to the next level in 2024, I assure you. So stay tuned, stick around, and keep on prepping. Thanks for watching. And yes, for all of those who love the small talk, Happy New Year, guys. It should go without saying. This is an emergency update. The world is about to go to war. 2024 is about to start off with a bang and unfortunately maybe end in a whimper. Conflict is exploding around the world in every possible theater in the last 24 hours. Social media has been completely frenetic. The news cycle is so rapid fire, I cannot even keep track of all the information, but I'm going to try to enumerate it in my usual bird's eye view fashion and try to connect the dots. But I tell you, man, we're broaching every possible tipping point, it appears, at the exact same time. And everybody that I've networked with over the last few years who's in the high profile, high net worth category, I can tell you all right now, they're unequivocally preparing for shit hit the fan. Okay, so if you aren't, then you're crazy. That's all I got to say. Now, before we get into all the data points, and there's many, just my summary is 2 pages long. And I'm going to try to rattle that off as quick as possible just to put in perspective what is happening and how rapidly it's happening. But first I want to share a small clip of this video with you. Now, typically videos like this that go viral right away on the first day that they're released, I don't put a whole lot of stock into them because later it usually comes out that either the person faked the video or it was just blown out of proportion. But this one, according to the comments that I've been reading on it, is true. To give you some context, the woman is in front of an undisclosed location outside of Washington, D.C. She claims that it's a set of government buildings that are typically quite shadowy, classified type buildings. And there's a loudspeaker playing the emergency broadcast message, insisting that this is just a test of the emergency system. It's not real world, don't worry. And it's playing that over and over on a loop. And she said that it was playing it over and over for several hours. Now, the authorities came out afterwards, according to one of the comments that I was reading, and said that this was just a glitch, okay? Now, that's a pretty big glitch. I could see maybe for 5-10 minutes, but for 2 hours to be blaring this message, and I'm reluctant to share the extended version with you because, number one, they're just saying the same thing over and over, but with a lot of these emergency broadcast messages, if you play them, and there's some sort of FCC law that if you, especially the one that's like, you can't actually legally play that. You can be fined, and not only you can be fined, but the platform that is hosting you can be fined. This isn't that. This seems like a more generic message, but it's just something to be mindful of that in the run up to New Year's, many authorities around the world are worried about terrorist attacks. Now, terrorist attacks are not something I really lose sleep over. I'm not a big New Year's party guy, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to be finding myself in a big crowd of people this year. So, and they're usually typically benign, isolated incidents. I'd be more worried about just global warfare ensuing, which it appears it's a given at this point. The Middle East is flaring up as we speak. The war has started. They're never going to officially delineate it with a declaration of war anymore, but it's begun. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. I mean, the whole shit's just going up in flames right now. Let me just play a little clip of this for you because this is suspicious in light of everything that we've been talking about. Okay.
Is a test of the emergency.
Well, I was live and TikTok banned me. Not sure why.
There is
Just wanted to show you guys still at 4:10
only a test.
a.m. This has been going on for 2 hours.
Okay, so why the loudspeaker at these buildings, right? And why the test now? Or is it because they're implementing a new system? We know that in many countries around the world, they've been rolling out these emergency alert systems in the run-up to what will inevitably be a clash of multipolar world superpowers. But the fact that it was going for 2 hours, that's very concerning. You know, I mean, was this some sort of cyber attack? I don't know, but it's concerning to say the least. This is not one of those things that I would just chalk up to an overhyped big nothing burger. This is kind of different. Now, is it just part and parcel of the plans for continuity of government that are happening under the radar? It's very likely. Is it a sign that something is impending? At this point in time, every day I'm preparing for shit to hit the fan. And I can tell you that the people I know who are in the know in the sense that they're fairly well networked, fairly well apprised of what's going on, they are prepping like there's no tomorrow. Okay, and these are very intelligent people who are wealthy. They are very well networked, and if they're doing it, okay, if the wealthiest people among you, I mean, if Kim Kardashian has a nuclear fallout shelter bunker, and you still aren't prepping, then something's wrong. Not saying but that's almost like the litmus test. That's almost like the canary in the coal mine. If that level of celebrity is preparing for shit to hit the fan and you're not, and you're just waiting for some sort of social proof from these conformist lemmings, then my friend, something is wrong. You haven't been paying attention to this channel. Don't listen to Normalcy Norman. Listen to your gut right now. And your gut should be telling you that 2024 is going to be a wild ride. Even if there wasn't an election. But the fact that there's going to be an election or possibly no election and a civil war is problematic. Now, let me go over this litany of SHTF data points. Number one, Russia accuses NATO of bombing Belgorod with illegal weapons. I repeat, Russia incurred its largest ever attack from Ukraine today, right after Ukraine incurred its largest ever attack. But the Russians are claiming that they were utilizing NATO weapons enabled by NATO, and not only that, commanded and overseen and provided ISR information in order to facilitate this attack. Okay, so they are saying that NATO has empowered Ukraine to kill Russian civilians inside Russia, not in the annexed territories, in Belgorod, utilizing banned weapons, cluster munitions. Okay, now in terms of international law, banned weapons, whether or not Ukraine was justified in doing what they did, I'm not even going to get into the politics of that, because one could say that, hey, you invaded Ukraine, then you got to expect some kind of blowback in the form of that country attacking you back. So regardless, Russia's making a big deal about this, and they're singling out the UK and the United States. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's just rattle off the data points. I'm going to try to strictly, in a very disciplined way, do that from here on in. Russia calls for an emergency meeting at the UN in response to this, which is currently ongoing, I should add. The U.S. has opened an airstrip that was used in the Hiroshima bombings in World War II with China, just north of Guam. They've also installed 6 THAAD systems. These are anti-ballistic missile systems in Guam. Okay, so something is definitely being hatched in that neck of the woods. The F-16s, more evidence that they're already in Ukraine and being used to target Russian planes. If they're being used to target Russian planes successfully, then we got ourselves a potential nuclear escalation on our hands. We have Ukraine targeting Belgorod. As I indicated, we have Poland on high alert after Russian missile enters airspace. They've given up on the search for the missile, but they say that this was a missile who went through Polish airspace, came back around to Ukraine. I guess the Patriot missile defense system was sleeping at the time. This apparently attack on Ukraine was the largest ever Russian attack since the beginning of the war. 158 missiles, a combination of different missiles and drones. Still, this attack pales in comparison to just one day of bombardment of the Gaza Strip by the Israelis. But who's counting, right? The UK Defense Secretary says that UK is ready to go to war with the Russians. They're ready to mobilize thousands of troops on a moment's notice. And if you're wondering what's behind me, this is Yemen today. Okay, this is Yemen. Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Yemen ready to go to war with Israel. I tell you, the Middle East is about to flare up. There is no doubt in my mind that you're going to see a war with Lebanon, and that you're definitely going to see the entirety of the Middle East turn into a massive conflagration in the not-so-distant future, and it is going to drive commodity prices through the roof. We have South Korea getting ready to accept F-35s. The USA is deploying these F-35s all around the world, and I think the reason why is that when World War III starts, you want all of these countries who have the deployment mechanism to be ready to receive the tactical nukes that these things are going to carry. Because remember, when you have the deployment system, you're effectively you're under the nuclear umbrella. You're considered a nuclear superpower by the opposition. So South Korea has now put a massive target on its back. It hasn't quite gotten the nuclear weapons yet, but it has the deployment system, and of course the Americans are already there with the nukes anyways. Germany is talking about bringing back conscription. Biden is reiterating the threat that they will have to fight the Russians if Ukraine loses. Ukrainian accounts are threatening more terrorism. They're not using that word, but threatening more attacks on Russia in order to provoke the Russians in attacking NATO in order to get weapons from the West. Yes, you heard correct. They're basically now, and these are not official government, associated with Ukrainian government. These are the NATO guys, and they're threatening that more attacks are going to occur, and where there's smoke, there's fire, so they're probably not too far off the mark. They're saying that we're going to continue to provoke the Russians if the West doesn't give us the weapons that we want. Okay? So the weapons that we're going to need to push the Russians back in order to, which will ultimately lead to the same end, which will be a Russian retaliation against NATO. And the former
And I wanted to add something on this. Let's just suppose for one moment that Ukraine is begging for these powerful weapons from us, right? And we give them these powerful weapons. And as soon as we do that, guess who they team up with against us? Russia. All as a ploy. Because there is a lot of fucked up tomfoolery going on all up in this shit. I mean, I already know. They're all in it together. This is all a big bunch of bullshit. They're coming for all of us, and that is just the way that it fucking is. But we're not going to let that happen. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but I do know that each and every one of us will rise to the fucking occasion when we're called to do so.
Person who now goes by S or Sarah Ashton Cirillo, I'll show you the clip in just a moment, is saying that by summer of 2024, they don't expect the Kerch Bridge to be standing. Okay, now if the Kerch Bridge is not standing in 2024, in the summer of 2024, then this thing is going to escalate wildly out of control. All right, we have USA deploying troops to Kosovo. I believe this is a regular rotation, but in light of the fact that what some people are calling Maidan Coup 2.0 underway in Serbia, that's certainly problematic. It looks like we might have another front opening up, and what we're likely to see is civil wars emerge throughout the Middle East, throughout Europe, and which will eventually take on the form of hot wars between nation states. We have France warning of terrorist attacks on New Year's, 100,000 police on alert, and several thousand military as well. This is also the case in Germany, New York City, Chicago, Vienna, UK, all on high alert.
Yeah, be careful tonight, y'all. Like, please be careful if you go out and about, especially if you go near any big cities, if you're going to be in large groups of people. Just be careful. My suggestion to everyone, just because of everything that's going on, you can have your own fun at home and have a motherfucking great time, even if you're just by yourself, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, even if it's just you and your puppy dog or your snake. You can have a great time and be safe and not get caught out there in the insanity if it does go down. But, you know, to each his own. I'm just saying, I'm chilling here, but I have rituals to do anyway. So I have a prior obligation and engagement. But be safe. I love you guys.
For New Year's Eve, because of course you're going to have these dense conglomerations of individuals in one place. Is going to be prime targets for terrorist attacks, or those flashbulb moments. I think right now in the current climate, if you were to get one of those, it would be very impactful in terms of foreign policy. We have a disease, a new fungus spreading in Israel. Apparently, one IDF soldier died as a result of this fungus, and 10 others were infected. We also have disease spreading wildly through the Gaza Strip, with hundreds of thousands succumbing to respiratory illness, as well as diarrhea and other illnesses, waterborne illnesses due to poor sanitation, lack of supplies, lack of healthcare, that sort of thing. So are we going to see a World War I scenario where you have war, you have trench warfare, you got the mice in the trenches, just like you have in Ukraine, and maybe some new disease emerges from all of this? Speaking of disease, COVID is back again, and now they're saying that this new variant actually affects the heart. So it's going to lead to heart failure all around the world. I'm just going to leave that one. Let's just do no comment there. But
yeah, I had to stop for that one. Yeah. Hail, Infernal family. Hail to all of you here. Fucking love you. Hail, Lucifer. Hail, Satan. Hail, Lilith. Hail, Belial. Yeah. Hail, Azazel. Can't forget him.
It's not looking good. We have 250,000 Israelis have been evacuated from the Lebanese border. All right, so we know that war is coming there. Don't succumb to the normalcy bias. The same people, the same type of pundit who is saying that, you know, Ukraine didn't have anything to worry about because Russia would never invade. Okay, it's a much more low intensity state of affairs than we're seeing right now on the Lebanese North Israeli border. It was much more chill there, and of course we know what happened. So, you know, knowing everything we know about what's happening in the untenable state of affairs in the Gaza Strip right now, we know that that front is going to go up in flames. Okay, the war with Lebanon, Hezbollah. Some people are saying it's going to first start as a civil war, which is going to spill over, and that's, you know, the Israel.
Hell yeah, Vincent. You know it. What's up, Matthew Barrows? What's up, Kathy? Fuck yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm ready for tonight too, Vincent. Absolutely. Got one of your delicious cigars ready, my brother. And thank you for that. And thank you for the cashew brittle. Appreciate that like a motherfucker too. And I love you all. And yeah, there was a good point that I think F. Kitty made a minute ago. That is very important because this is happening a lot over to the Palestinians right now. Of course, in refugee camps, there is a lot of sickness going around because of the unsanitary environment of where human waste is going and where fresh water is coming from. And so if that ever happens, just use your common sense. Do the best that you can to keep these things separated Dysentery would be horrible, even if you were in a five-star hotel. Dysentery would be horrible. So if you were actually living in the throes of hell, in the dirt with a bunch of craziness and chaos, and you had dysentery too, could you imagine? Yeah, it would be fucked. So use some common sense there, and good comment.
Intelligence and whoever is pro
Love
Israel,
you too, Vincent.
America in Lebanon is going to try to foment some sort of civil conflict there,
Kathy.
and that's when the war is going to start. Among other things, we got Iran attacking U.S. bases across the Middle East. We have vice versa, Syria under attack from Israel. We have 11 IRGC officers assassinated. Okay, this was a pretty high level attack. We also have Iran assassinating Israeli spies. All of this in the last 48 hours. Syrian oil fields under heavy bombardment. We have the Houthis attacking yet another ship again today. We have John Bolton calling for war with Iran, but what else is new? We have the Iranians sending weapons to Venezuela, so you can see the hardening and solidifying of the alliances on the Axis side of things. We have Venezuela running exercises to counter the British naval presence. We have
Gonna enjoy
unrealized
one now
losses
there,
by
Vincent.
the U.S.'s
I've
biggest
been
banks
enjoying
at the
this one
highest
today.
ever.
Thank you,
We have
brother.
the Fed's emergency
Thank
lending
you,
at
my
an
brother.
all-time high. We have debt at an all-time high, gold at all-time highs, and that new COVID variant rearing its ugly head. And the planet is hotter than ever before. Than it's been since modern humans in the last 125,000 years. The Canadian geese have not migrated this year, and it's a sign of the times, all right? The deer aren't quite talking to me yet, as some people were joking, making reference to the movie Leave the World Behind. But if you're not prepping at this point in time, I'm telling you, every influential individual in the world is preparing for things to go awry right now. Now, if you're Warren Buffett or the late Charlie Munger, you might say to yourself, well, when people are fearful, be greedy. And that maybe if fear is reaching an all-time high, maybe nothing is going to happen. But I think to the contrary, we're approaching so many tipping points at this point of time, and they're all coalescing at one point, it seems. And I don't know, I just got a real bad feeling, which is why every opportunity I have right now to convert whatever sort of zeros and ones on a screen that are in my possession into something tangible, I'm seizing on that opportunity. Okay, so if that means making a Costco run, making a run to the wholesale food store, just getting whatever tangible things you can now, because this whole situation with the climactic shift up here, and we'll talk about that today, it's very strange, and I do believe that we're going to see some dire agricultural effects as a result of it. You can see here, red means anomaly, okay? So this is not one of those maps that has been fabricated to show
very
red.
nice, my
And,
brother.
yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
some of you guys know what I'm talking
I
about.
love
There's
that
some
shit.
maps that are circulating that some of the hardline climate activists use, and they embellish the details of which in order to in a more alarmist, sensational manner try to communicate their point. But what this is an anomaly. So the redder, the deader. Okay, so the redder means that the anomaly it's not an indication of how warm it is there at this point in time. It's how warm relative to the average. And pretty much the entirety of the northern hemisphere, with the exception of Moscow and the Scandinavian states, including China as well, has been seeing record temperatures and just a lack of precipitation in numerous places, especially in the grain belts, which is problematic. So that's why you need to stock up on food. That's why the major countries of the world, the major consumers like India and China, they've either banned the exportation of foods or they are stockpiling it currently, because as war and all these things continue, it's only going to make the problems monumentally worse. Now, where should we begin here? So the situation in Belgorod is pretty serious, according to the Russians, because they are claiming in the days leading up to this now, okay, and this is what a lot of people are forgetting, that it wasn't only this recent attack. I can't remember the... Israel intelligence and whoever is pro Israel, America in Lebanon is going to try to foment some sort of civil conflict there, and that's when the war is going to start. Among other things, we got Iran attacking U.S. bases across the Middle East. We have vice versa, Syria under attack from Israel. We have 11 IRGC officers assassinated. Okay, this was a pretty high-level attack. We also have Iran assassinating Israeli spies. All of this in the last 48 hours. Syrian oil fields under heavy bombardment. We have the Houthis attacking yet another ship again today. We have John Bolton calling for war with Iran, but what else is new? We have the Iranians sending weapons to Venezuela, so you can see the hardening and solidifying of the alliances on the Axis side of things. We have Venezuela running exercises to counter the British naval presence. We have unrealized losses by the U.S.'s biggest banks at the highest ever. We have the Fed's emergency lending at an all-time high. We have debt at an all-time high, gold at all-time highs, and that new COVID variant rearing its ugly head. And the planet is hotter than ever before than it's been since modern humans in the last 125,000 years. The Canadian geese have not migrated this year, and it's a sign of the times, all right? The deer aren't quite talking to me yet, as some people were joking, making reference to the movie Leave the World Behind. But if you're not prepping at this point in time, I'm telling you, every influential individual in the world is preparing for things to go awry right now. Now, if you're Warren Buffett or the late Charlie Munger, you might say to yourself, well, when people are fearful, be greedy. And that maybe if fear is reaching an all-time high, maybe nothing is going to happen. But I think to the contrary, we're approaching so many tipping points at this point of time, and they're all coalescing at one point, it seems. And I don't know, I just got a real bad feeling, which is why every opportunity I have right now to convert whatever sort of zeros and ones on a screen that are in my possession into something tangible, I'm seizing on that opportunity. Okay, so if that means making a Costco run, making a run to the wholesale food store, just getting whatever tangible things you can now, because this whole situation with the climactic shift up here, and we'll talk about that today, it's very strange, and I do believe that we're going to see some dire agricultural effects as a result of it. You can see here, red means anomaly, okay? So this is not one of those maps that has been fabricated to show red. And I think some of you guys know what I'm talking about. There's some maps that are circulating that, some of the hardline climate activists use, and they embellish the details of which in order to, in a more alarmist, sensational manner, try to communicate their point. But what this is an anomaly. So the redder, the deader. Okay, so the redder means that the anomaly is, it's not an indication of how warm it is there at this point in time. It's how warm relative to the average. And pretty much the entirety of the Northern Hemisphere, with the exception of Moscow and the Scandinavian states, including China as well, has been seeing record temperatures and just a lack of precipitation in numerous places, especially in the grain belts, which is problematic. So that's why you need to stock up on food. That's why the major countries of the world, the major consumers like India and China, they've either banned the exportation of foods or they are stockpiling it currently, because as war and all these things continue, it's only going to make the problems monumentally worse. Now, where should we begin here? So the situation in Belgorod is pretty serious, according to the Russians, because they are claiming in the days leading up to this now, okay, and this is what a lot of people are forgetting, that it wasn't only this recent attack. I can't remember the exact weapon system that the Russians are claiming was utilized. The Ukrainians are saying, oh, this is just a bunch of wayward, Russian air defense missiles that hit civilian targets. Now, to me, I could see that if there was maybe one or two of those things, but a lot of the Russian air defense systems are meant to self-destruct, so this doesn't happen. That it was happening in so many different places at once. It starts to look like this was a direct provocation in order to get some kind of response from the Russians that then would be used to justify bringing NATO into the conflict. So it's almost like Ukraine, and this is just one theory. I'm not saying this is 100%, but and this is what the NATO crowd is openly, explicitly stating on Twitter. They're saying that this was an intentional attack in order, and I'm not saying that, I'm saying that's what they're saying. This was an intentional attack in order to get the attention of the Western community, and that if you don't give us the weapons that we need, we're going to continue to poke the bear until the bear pokes back at NATO, which would, of course, require us to get involved at that point. So I don't know how much stock I put in that theory, but it's something to consider. Anyways, Russian air defense intercepted 3 American-made HARM anti-radar missiles over the territory of Belgorod. This was the day before this happened. Now, was that just a probing operation? In addition to the attack on Belgorod, most people don't realize that there were 70 drones that were sent out by Ukraine. They went to a variety of different regions, from Moscow to Tula. I believe Tula was the place where they had the airport shut down temporarily because the Ukrainians were targeting the bombers. Drones that have a 1,000 kilometer range, and they carry a substantial ordnance. So, and as well as the Bryansk region. So this was a large-scale coordinated attack. Now, the reason why this is different, now, and just to put it in perspective, this is an attack on Russia, okay? This is not the annexed territories. This is a direct attack. The Russians are saying NATO is complicit, and they're also saying that they're utilizing illegal weapons, which I don't really think the Russians care about. I don't think that's necessarily, they care about it in the sense of what sort of damage was done, but in terms of the sentiment of it, I don't think they're too concerned. They're very strategic thinkers. In addition to this, you have F-16s, according to Al Mayadeen, which is a Lebanese news source, and so take it with a grain of salt, and they're quoting a Belarusian military analyst, and this makes a lot of sense when you think about it. They're saying that the F-16s are already in Ukraine being used. Now, if they're already in Ukraine being used, then you would think that the Russians would have pinpointed where they're being where they're being deployed from, like what airstrips. So, assuming that they're being deployed from NATO airstrips, and assuming that what he's saying is true here, and that they're already being used to target Russian planes, which is why the Russians have lost so many planes, allegedly, in the past week. And the evidence, he suggests, is that the British sold 200 ASRAAM air-to-air missiles to Ukraine. Now, these ASRAAM missiles are, can only be deployed, as far as I know, I'm no military expert, specifically in the realm of the Air Force, they can only be deployed on F-16s and I believe Typhoon fighter jets, okay? Now, I know there was talks of getting Ukraine Typhoon fighter jets as well. I don't think they have them yet. But they can be deployed on F-16s. So why would you want these air-to-air surface missiles unless you already had F-16s? It's really starting to look, especially when you have Big Mouth Cirilio saying that the F-16s are already there before the end of the year. I think it's pretty clear that that's probably what has happened. But the concerning thing for me with all of this is that I know a lot of people, they continue to persist that, well, Russia has this in the bag. But if NATO is only barely fighting this fight with the support that they're giving to the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are fighting with a hand tied behind their back, then you got to think that if the Russians are being held at bay to the extent that they are, with Ukraine having a hand tied behind its back, what happens when they unleash the dogs of war, okay? And so this is when the situation becomes very tense, the stakes get very high. If, in fact, the Russians are not doing as well as a lot of the Russia bros think, then we're in a lot of trouble, because it means we're only a hop, skip, and a jump away from somebody going unconventional and utilizing a nuclear weapon. All right. So, in fact, especially with what's going on in Poland right now, where they've given up on the search for this missile. Of course, there was no talk of Article 4, no talk of Article 5, and NATO is worried because they made this distinctly about Poland. There was very little talk about the missile hitting NATO territory this time. You had some news reports embellish it a little bit by saying a NATO country was hit with a missile, but in terms of the actual policy surrounding mitigating the crisis, it was strictly left in the hands of Poland because they didn't want to trigger the Russians, because they know, right, when they say Article 4, Russia's thinking about Article 5, and that's when, the doomsday planes are put into the air. It cannot go without saying that this was the largest ever Russian attack that triggered this Belgorod retaliation ever. 158 missiles, many of which successfully hit their targets. And they were able, and this is how the Russians are always thinking like in terms of chess. So they went for the Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles storage, where they were stored in Ukraine. So they're not going to burn an attack like this. They're not going to waste it on just any old military base. They're going to try to go right to the source of the problem. And so that's allegedly what they did. And another confusing thing for me is that apparently they also were targeting some manufacturing facilities that the Ukrainians were using to build weapons. Now, the thing I can just not understand is why on earth would you be manufacturing weapons in Ukraine at this point in time, unless you're doing it subterranean? Because it just makes no sense, especially for these foreign investors. And we see these defense contractors get around Zelensky. Why on earth would you invest in this sort of thing if it wasn't just some sort of money laundering operation, as a friend of mine suspects, or if it wasn't just, maybe a diversion or a decoy? Because as far as I know anyways, Ukraine, this is the frontier, and back in the Soviet era, I'm quite certain that there was an extensive network of underground bunker systems, which is probably why this war is so hard to fight, and which is probably why they're never going to really go into Kiev in that capacity, because of, whatever sort of underground networks. I mean, that was part of the problem with Bakhmut and Mariupol. So I can only imagine on a much larger city having to deal with that sort of subterranean combat. We're seeing how that's playing out in Israel, and it's not going too well for the Israelis. So there is very likely a large operation that's happening underground, I would presume. But apparently they were able to get some successful strikes on manufacturing facilities, but we'll never really know, because the only footage Ukraine ever releases and is allowed to release is civilian targets being hit in order to appeal to the international community. Now, we have the UK saying that they are preparing for war with Russia. Defense Secretary Grant Shapps says in a direct warning to Putin, the defense secretary said UK troops are fully armed and prepared to fight. War means that troops want to fight, but Russian forces are not up for it, he claims. That doesn't quite make sense, considering the Russians have one of the biggest armies in the world. And if you think about it, the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and the Iranians all have the largest armies in the world, respectively, which is crazy that, countries like Germany, who can barely muster 200,000 troops, or the UK, which is probably even less than that, are making these insane threats, especially when one Sarmat missile with multiple warheads could completely wipe the United Kingdom off the map. But anyways, he says that thousands of British troops are ready to deploy within days, as the UK is now leading NATO's very high readiness joint task force. This is all while the Russians are blaming the UK for this attack, and the UK is talking about floating a bunch of ships in the Black Sea. Guys, there ain't much time left. Just keep on prepping, man, because the shizzy is about to hit the fizzy. This emergency meeting called by the UN Security Council, I don't even know why Russia continues to do this. I mean, I understand that they try to litigate to the best of their capability, and they claim to respect international law, but this is beating a dead horse at this point. The UN is just a hollow organization that is completely pointless at this point in time. That's become abundantly clear when you have countries like Israel who completely disregard it, but then they bring it up when it's relevant to them. Anyways, Germany is going to bring back conscription. Boris Pistorius is already talking about it. They're concerned that they can't get their numbers up. And of course, they're planning on going to war with the Russians and all this other crazy stuff, which is probably just going to end up being a drone war, unconventional, low-yield tactical nuclear war anyways. So maybe that's why they're not so concerned about bringing up enrollments, even though in the United States, we know that they've been boosting the amount of recruiters. I think they're talking like in the hundreds of new recruiters right now, but they're having a hard time. You got to get the economy to plummet enough to incentivize people to give it so that's the only job available, and then maybe you'll get some takers. Joe Biden has reiterated his warning that the U.S. will have to fight Russia if Ukraine falters in their efforts to reconquer territory. The USA has deployed troops to Kosovo. France is warning of terrorist attacks. They've deployed 90,000 officers for these New Year's festivities. I think if the concern was that high, why would you even hold these these festivities at this point in time? MI5 is rating the UK as having a very substantial risk of terrorist attacks. In Germany, Cologne's iconic cathedral is under close watch. Vienna is increasing patrols around festive events, and the New York NYC is tightening Times Square security with checkpoints and increased surveillance, as well as Chicago as well. This map right here signals another attack by the Houthis just off the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So this is an ongoing thing, in spite of the fact that a lot of the transport companies have begun to restart transporting through the Red Sea because of the warship escorts. They're still being attacked, and I think it's probably only a matter of time before they suspend activities there once again. Now, in terms of what's going on in
Which they
Lebanon,
have.
the situation is pretty crazy, and it's a lot worse than we're being told, okay? There's 250,000 people on the Israeli side who've been evacuated. So this is something you would do in the run-up to a conflict. Again, don't succumb to the normalcy bias. If you're in that region and you're not 110% committed to the whole Zionist thing, then you might want to consider, packing up and jumping ship. And the same goes on the Lebanese side. If this is not a war you want to fight, don't wait for the final minute. You might want to get out of Dodge while the getting is good, because it seems like the situation is going to flare up there, especially when you have a hit put on the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah's head. It's only a matter of time before they have to initiate something, because, the clock is ticking. What else do we got going on here? Attacks on U.S. bases. I mean, more than we can count, just attack after attack. The war in the Middle East has started. I think it's as of January 1st, 2024, it's probably going to be official that it's begun, because there's just been so many attacks in the last 48 hours. I mean, airstrikes after airstrikes. The Russian anti-aircraft systems are taking down Israeli bombs, not the jets. And these are likely being manned by Syrian forces or IRGC-backed militias. So it's not as though the Russians are targeting Israeli planes yet, but we might be coming towards that point in the not-so-distant future. The Iranians are sending weapons to Venezuela. In addition to these anti-ship missiles that they're being sent, they're also shipping them they're also helping them build drones, but they're also shipping them these naval boats that they're going to use against the British Navy, I guess, if they eventually go to war with Guyana and the United States and the Brits get involved. So we got a war on pretty much every continent at this point in time. And that situation in Africa with Niger and Sudan, I mean, that could flare up at any time once again as well. Disease in Gaza. So in the Gaza Strip right now, they're going back to the 1800s. And, they're using, horse and carriage, donkey, it looks like, mule, whatever that is. And 180,000 people there have been stricken with upper respiratory infections, 130,000 with diarrhea, 55,000 cases of lice and scabies, 5,300 cases of chickenpox in just 12 weeks. Now, that's a significant portion of the population when you factor in, the 100,000 odd casualties. We're talking about 25%
Hail to
of the
everyone.
population
Love you guys.
directly affected by some sort of ailment related to the conflict, and it's likely only going to get worse. And of course, if this is spreading to Israeli soldiers, they're bringing it back to Israel. Who knows what sort of novel disease is going to emerge in these types of conditions, especially when you do have animals, in the mix, and you have zoonotic diseases jumping in and out of species. The situation can get out of control. If the rats in the trenches in Russia, Ukraine don't do it, then that certainly will. This is an interesting story. This girl is basically saying she's in Ukraine, and she's talking about the new mobilization law. So she's saying as of January 10th, they're going to consider a new mobilization law. And I got to bring up Starship Troopers again, because if you remember in the movie Starship Troopers, they make the distinction between citizen and civilian. It takes place in this neo-fascist dystopian sci-fi future, and really it's just kind of a satire for modern warfare. But basically what she's saying is you're not going to be able to do anything unless you mobilize, unless you go and fight on the front lines. So you're not going to be able to buy things. You're not going to be able to have investments. You're probably not going to be able to get married and have kids and have a family either. Let's just see what she has to say. You'll be forbidden. What will be forbidden if you don't have a military ID? So you won't be able to go abroad. Okay, you can no longer sell real estate and other property. And this is what's coming here, guys. That's the scariest thing. You're not going to be able to drive a vehicle, all right? If you're stopped by the police and you don't have a military ID, you can't drive a car, great. You'll also be denied loans, denied public services, so probably no health care. And the coolest thing is, she's being sarcastic, you will have restrictions on your personal funds. Go to the bank and say, I want to withdraw my money that I've earned, and the bank will say, show me the military ID. And if you don't, yada, yada, yada. And anyways, so a lot of people in Ukraine are starting to not feel too good about a lot of these policies that are currently underway. And it's becoming more and more draconian, and the country has been completely destroyed.
Fuck that. Fuck that motherfucking bullshit.
Who you listen to, the amount of emigration from the country is possibly in the tens of millions. I don't think it's that high. I think on the conservative end, it's around 7 million people who've left. But some people are saying it's up to 20 million in terms of displaced people who've been killed, casualties in the war. That seems like a pretty high number, but, it's in such disarray. And then you have to also factor in.
Okay, so 20 million. That means that they only have maybe 200 million people to go, maybe 300 million, so maybe a billion. It might take a billion to satisfy these elites to depopulate the world. Maybe it's going to take a billion, but we're already up at 20 million. 20 million is a big fucking number, but in the grand scheme of it, it really doesn't make a difference to them.
How much that has been absorbed by Russia, that initial 40 million population. Now, this is kind of funny. This guy, girl, whatever, is saying that by summer of 2024, the Kerch Bridge won't be standing.
Summer of 2024? It's going to be explosive out there. And it's going to be the Russians that are exploding.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't expect the Kerch Bridge to be standing in the summer of 2024. I don't expect Crimea to be in Russian hands at the end of our victory. Summer of 2024?
I mean, this guy says the craziest things, right? I mean, I don't know. He's like a 1930s propagandist. The 1930s called, they want their propaganda back, bro. Anyways, what else is going on? In the Denver airport, they've put up these new billboards, and I don't understand what sort of message they're trying to conceal. I mean, I get what they're trying to do. Okay, so if you guys don't know the backstory of the Denver airport, I think it's pretty common knowledge now that something is going on there, whether it's part of the continuity of government plan or not. I think what they've tried to do now is they're using this sort of a satire, these signs to kind of make light of the fact they got talking gargoyles and making fun of the fact that there's all sorts of conspiracy around what the actual purpose of the airport is, like it's in the shape of a swastika, all kinds of weird stuff. But I think what they're doing here is that if I was a betting man, I would say yes, there absolutely is something going on. Maybe not necessarily even under the Denver airport, but that it's a portal for something that goes maybe, underground, some subterranean complex that starts at the Denver airport because that's the central hub. It's central United States. It's where it's the fastest, it's the most accessible by the most amount of people from both East and West Coast. I'm not talking about you and me. I'm talking about the high rollers, right? Who are going to be living in this complex after World War III. And I think what it is, it's a portal, and there's not like a, crazy sci-fi portal, like an actual, this is where the tunnels start. And the tunnels probably go under, let me just see here. Let's pull up the map. If I was a betting man, because remember, there are secret government bunkers that we don't know where they are. Of course there is. So you have the mountains right here.
Yes, there are. And I'm going to tell you all right now about some that I am privy to because I live in Richmond, Virginia. That's about 100 miles from Washington, D.C. And I've known about this for probably 20 years or so now due to some electrician friends of mine that actually worked on this thing. So there are tunnels from Washington, D.C. to Richmond, Virginia, near the or on the on the property of the Richmond International Raceway, where they have NASCAR races. There is also an underground there is an underground Air Force facility where there's F-16 jets and all kinds of things that are stored underground that would be lifted to the surface in the event that they are needed. But that's like one of the first places that the president would go and the cabinet would go. In the case of an emergency, there are tunnel systems from Washington, D.C. all the way to Richmond, Virginia, and that's where they will be coming. They'll be coming to where I'm at. I'm surrounded by every kind of military, where they stockpile goods, military forts. I'm less than 100 miles away from the nuclear Navy stations and everything else. I mean, I'm not in the best place to be situated in the case of one of these types of events, but I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. I mean, I am. But at the same time, it's something that I have been accepting for the last 30 years. So we'll continue, and I love you all, and hail, Happy New Year.
Here, right? And then you have the Denver airport in the shape of a swastika, nothing to see there. And then at the Denver, and this might be some kind of weird nod to Baphomet or something, I don't know. It looks like some sort of goat's head or whatever. Anyways, I think that the tunneling technology is so good nowadays. What you would want to do if you were building something to survive the apocalypse, you could even have the entrance in plain sight. It wouldn't matter, because what you would likely do is you would tunnel miles away from that entry point. So even if your adversary knew, like even if the Russians have the Denver airport as one of their strategic targets, it wouldn't really matter, because the actual, bomb shelter, nuclear fallout shelter is probably in the mountains somewhere, and that's just a portal to it. So I think a lot of this enciphering, this veiled messaging, this esoteric association between the reptoids, the reptiles, and the idea that this is part of a continuity of government plan is there to kind of demean and poke fun at it, but and also kind of make light of it, right? And just, haha, it's a big joke. Like this one here where they say, thanks for being patient. The lizard people are stealing all our tools, to kind of, associate the very sensible idea that there's a continuity of government plan that might be based around the Denver airport with shape-shifting lizards and all this crazy shit, right? So people just be like, that's crazy talk. Apologies for all the noise. It takes really big drills to get to the underworld. They're just... Maybe it's like a marketing gimmick. Forgive the mess. Building secret underground tunnels can get quite untidy. It's like in plain sight. They're showing you it. They're telling you the plan. And maybe, when the smoke clears, they can be like, hey, we told you. No, it wasn't a joke. We actually told you. The reptiles were assisting us. Anyways, I don't know, guys. I don't know what's going on. Now, let's just see here. So let's go over to the Eastern Theater, because this is what the Americans are up to in Guam. So in Guam, there's a lot of strange activity, because remember, the war with China and Taiwan and North Korea and South Korea is still coming. So in Guam, we have this island up here. This was the island. It had actually, this airstrip here had actually become overgrown. This was the airstrip that was used to send off the Enola Gay, I believe. That was the name of the plane, to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and drop the atomic bomb. Now they've resurrected this airstrip for some reason. I guess this is going to be part of the containment measures for China. And they've also deployed more THAAD systems in and around Guam. So why would they be doing this at this point in time? Like, that almost seems like a strategic move to me. That almost seems like they're getting ready for a possible nuclear attack on Guam or something. I don't know. But they're definitely starting to pre-position. They're starting to militarize the Philippines. They're moving all the pieces into position. And we're just going to have a war flare up at the same time on every front. Because as soon as one of these wars gets really, really hot, it's going to encourage these other theaters to take advantage of it. So if the U.S. gets pulled into a war with the Middle East, then the North Koreans and China is going to say, and who is being incredibly, eerily quiet right now, you'll notice, China's not saying anything. They're just arming up like there's no tomorrow. They're going to seize...
And that's something that I wanted to touch on very quickly in regards to China. They have been very quiet, and I firmly believe that they will be attacking Taiwan very soon. If there's anything that you need that requires a microchip with gold in it, like a gold, anything, a hard drive, a microchip, anything computerized that uses these very small microchips, you better get it now, because Taiwan makes, I don't know, something like 90% of these kind of products, and they are going to soon be unable to do that. At this point in time right now, if you're a Chinese citizen, if you take any pictures of any type of government facility, any type of military activity, any type of picture that depicts anything about their military movements, you will face 7 years in prison. They're not playing around, and of course, you know they're not playing around. That social credit score that we're so terrified of, if you don't know anything about what a social credit score is, you need to educate yourself, because in case all of you didn't realize, we have a communist president, and we're becoming a communist country. And everything that China is doing will be coming here. And these are things that you do not want anything to do with ever, because it will control every facet of your life. It will control every movement that you make, and they'll know everything that you're doing all the time. And that will limit your ability to function in life, and that's fucking crazy, and that shit's coming here. So anyway,
on that opportunity while we're preoccupied in Europe and the Middle East, and they're going to probably try to either militarily or try to foment some sort of coup with inside Taiwan, depending on which way the election goes. But it looks like no matter which way the election goes in Taiwan, the Americans are pretty deeply entrenched there politically, financially. So it's looking as though that the Chinese are going to have to make a move militarily at some point, and they've threatened to do so. There's been a lot of posturing in that direction, and of course, the North Korean peninsula needs no explanation with respect to how tense that situation is. So it's not looking good. This is the amount of money that the Fed has been lending. Okay, so here we are. This is 2023, I believe. This is December. Yeah. And so they've lent a lot of money since March. So look at how much money they've lent. $140 billion. That's what they're lending to banks. This is the amount of debt that we've accrued in the last 40 years. 7 trillion just from March 2020 to June 22. We're almost at 34 trillion. This is, and like I say, we're just broaching tipping point after tipping point. This is sea surface temperature anomaly in the last 10 years. Okay, so this is low temperatures. This is high temperatures. We're 5 degrees above average right now. We've broken every possible record. We were way up here at one point. Now we're still way above, like 5 degrees. So that situation's pretty crazy. We're at 1.7 degrees Celsius above the average. Remember, 1.5 used to be when they said, well, if we can't catch it at 1.5, there's going to be runaway effects and it's going to lead to the end of the world. Well, we're at 1.7 and they're saying we're not even going to be able to contain it under 2.5. And they say 3.5 is global cataclysm and possible human extinction. So yeah, the geese right now, I had a little TikTok video go slightly viral. You probably missed it on YouTube because YouTube doesn't seem to promote our shorts as much. But the birds, the geese, this is where I live right now. Today, plus temperatures once again, abnormally warm, 25 to 30 degrees above normal. No precipitation on the ground. This is going to have dire agricultural effects around the world. Food prices are going to skyrocket. And yeah. It's going to be an interesting year, which is why you got to lock in any commodity you can at this point in time, but that's not financial advice. And lastly, we have a new COVID variant. COVID scientists issue a warning. New variant could cause global heart failure pandemic. Japanese top research institute, Riken, has now issued a warning in the new report which states that the ACE2 receptors, which the coronavirus clings to within human cells, are very common in the heart. This means many people who catch the virus may suffer from reduced cardiac function. Well, is this why all the guys are dropping dead around the world? Let's not even go there. Let's not go there. I know you want to go there. I'm not going to go there. I can't get canceled yet, guys. There's too much, I got to stick with you to the end. We got to keep this show going until the bitter end. And the only way we do that is if we stay within that Overton window. And we just, we got to be careful because it's not over yet. All I can say is keep on prepping, man. I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm going to do a little supply run. Believe it or not, even the guy with the Preparedness store does supply runs. Speaking of which, capitalize. I haven't taken that Boxing Day sale down yet. I'm being generous. I'm just going to wait till New Year's. And then I'm going to turn it off. Not because, we don't have enough to do around here, but I'm just trying to be generous. And I just want people to capitalize on that to the best of their capability. Stock up on food. See, I have my own personal supply of freeze-dried food and things of that nature, which I don't mix with the store. They're two separate things. Now, if shit hit the fan, yes, I have a store that I would, of course, need to defend with my brethren here, but at the same time, I try to keep it separate, and I want to pass that on to you, those savings, and because we were able to lock in a fairly good deal on a lot of freeze-dried foodstuffs that we purchased back in and around the Black Friday time period, and we're still, trying to pass those deals on, but seize on that opportunity, guys. 15% off store-wide, pretty much, with the exception of some bigger ticket items. So lock it in while you can, because I can tell you the smart money, that's what they're doing at this point in time. Everybody I know who's, in a decent place, more affluent individuals than I know, and I don't know a whole lot, but, being where I am in this public figure space, you start to know a few people. And I can tell you that anyone with half a brain and a few cents in the bank is doing exactly what we are doing. So you're on the right path. Unfortunately, we'll all be vindicated as these tipping points converge in the not so distant future. 2024 is going to be a wild year, even without an election. That it's an election season is just the icing on the cake. So seize the day, carpe diem, as they say, and stay tuned. We'll be back again tomorrow with likely more bad news, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe everybody will just start getting along at the onset of 2024, but I highly doubt it.
So I just want to let you all know, about 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, I saw this coming. But I've seen this coming since 2020. I believe it was 2020. You can go back on this channel and you can look at a video that is called Lucifer and the Age of Aquarius. And that is where I predicted the Russian and Ukrainian war. Predicted a lot of these things that are happening now because Lucifer did reveal that to me. He did show that to me. I'm sure he's been revealing a lot of these things and showing you all of these things too, amongst other spirits. But I dropped about $700 on about 3 months of freeze-dried food that is good for about 25 years. The next investment that I'm going to be making, besides of additional ammunition for my firearms, which I really need to do, is get some water filtration system or some of those water filtration straws, and as well as start stockpiling distilled water too. As I've talked about before, I was raised as a Mormon, so this is something that has always been very normal and natural for me, because every Mormon, and take note on this if you know any Mormons, when the shit hits the fan, because most likely, most of them have a 2-year supply of food and water and other necessities for this exact type of situation. I'm not telling you to go and victimize these people by any means, but I am telling you to take a lesson and an example from them. With everything that's happening now, I will tell you that I did learn a great deal of just values and smart ways to live and prepare for uncertainty when I was in the Mormon church. I'm not saying to go to be a Mormon by any means. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people that have a lot of this right, and that they understand what is happening and what could fucking happen. And any of you, if you're a single person to where all you have to do is rely on yourself and take care of yourself, that's one thing. But if you do have people that love and depend on you, then I'm telling you right now that it is incumbent upon you that you take steps right now to prepare for whatever may come to the best of your ability. like our days are numbered as far as being able to rely on the normal everyday things that we have come to expect and rely on for most of our lives, because this world is changing. The poles are shifting. The earth is going through a cataclysmic reconciliation with itself, just as each and every one of us are. And like really, that's what this is all about. It's a reconciliation of everything that we have done to one another, because we are all one and we have been hurting each other since the very fucking beginning. Not only ourselves, but the earth. And the earth is just a metaphorical, metaphysical, energetic representation of each and every one of us. And whatever it's going through, we're going through. When it's suffering, we're suffering. And it's coming to a critical boiling point where the earth has had enough and we've had enough. And the earth, Mother Aya, Maya, whatever you want to call it, like, she knows. She knows what is up. She's going to make those shifts. She's going to make those changes. And it's imperative that we follow suit. We don't have any choice, really. This shift has begun. Like, this is the Tower card moment. It's already been going on now for quite a while, but it's as if at this point now that the card has been pulled, you've all seen it, and now you all know. You've seen the Tower. Here it is. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? It doesn't mean that it's like death and destruction. It just means a big change. And I would say, if you're like me, I hate change. I have resisted change. I have hated any kind of change since I was probably 5 years old. And that doesn't really serve me too well as an adult, but it's something that I struggle with. I struggle with change. I struggle with any kind of motherfucking change. And most people do. But this time, this change, this shift, it is upon us. And it's something that, like, none of us can deny anymore. Okay? You can stick your head in the sand. You can lie to yourself. You can say all day long that this is just how the world goes. It's happened a million times before. It'll blow over. And that everything is going to just go back to normal. There's no such motherfucking thing as normal anymore. Okay? Normal is going to be something that you are going to have to make adjustments to on a daily and weekly and monthly basis in your up and coming life. In various ways. You better get used to change. You better get used to trying to ride those waves so they don't crash over you. Because if you aren't ready, if you aren't flexible, if you're just going to crumble at the first sign of motherfucking trouble, then you're going to be in for it. You got to be ready. You got to think about this shit, dude. The world, this world, is not even the same world it was 6 months ago. Not even 6 months ago. Imagine where we're going to be in another 6 months. Imagine where we're going to be in another 12 or 18 months. If things continue to go down this road. And they could. They could. I hope they will not, but they might. They might. And so what does that mean? Just to get ready, right? Just to fucking get ready. Get ready. Whatever does that mean? It doesn't mean that, like, you need to say, fuck it, I'm going to go blow my brains out tomorrow. Or fuck it, I'm just going to quit living life and I'm just going to give up now. No. You are all here for a reason, in this time, in this place, on this earth, at this very moment, because you were chosen to fucking be here. Not only did you choose it, but at every single one of your fucking ancestors that you represent in a spiritual way have chosen you, the chosen one, to be here now, to represent your bloodline back to the very beginning. It's you, baby. So think about that for a moment. Really. I'm not trying to inflate your ego. I'm just trying to show you how important you are and that there's a reason that you're here living in this chaos. Having to endure this crazy shit. And it ain't even happened here yet. We don't even know nothing about it. But just know that you will have the strength, you will have the power within yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to handle anything that comes your way. From this point on, get ready. Prepare yourself. Each day that you wake up and the world hasn't gone to shit, be grateful. Each day that you wake up and you have food to eat, heat in your house and hot water, you can take a shower, you can drink water, you can take care of your family, be grateful. If anything else, in 2024, if anything else, be grateful for everything that you have ever had and be grateful for what you fucking have right motherfucking now. Gratitude is going to take you a long way. And that's really where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it with gratitude. I'm going to leave it with love to all of you. Happy New Year. I'm going to make my preparations for my prosperity ritual with Lucifer. You can still sign up if you want to. You've got like 2 hours to sign up if you'd like. You can email me at jdtemplehealing@gmail.com and send me a selfie photo, your name and date of birth. PayPal options and Cash App options are in older videos. I'm not even going to bother putting it in the description of this one, because anyone that wants to be a part of this bad enough will go back and they'll find out how to do it and how to hit me up. I mean, I'm not trying to be like that. It's just, we're at the last minutes of it. So anyway, I love you all. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Happy New Year's to you and your family. I wish you nothing but the best in your health, in your love, in your relationships, in your family, in your business, in everything that means anything to you. I hope that it is the best that it has ever been, and that will only continue from this day to the rest of your fucking days. I love you all. Hail the Infernal Empire. See ya. Smell my face and smell it good. I did include that one. Ha ha ha. Bye.